Thank you everyone for coming. It's quite exciting. This is actually a sold out event and I kept getting emails saying, please let us in, which says a lot about our little group, but also about the topic of conversation tonight, which is really important and really relevant to a lot of us. I love a good quote, and I was reading this today from Albert Einstein of all people. Learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is to not stop questioning. And from this day and age, we have to keep questioning what we're doing in work, but also how we actually implement change and look at different ways constantly. As a change manager, we have to constantly change and be agile as well. So it's exciting that we have Ro and Charlotte here tonight to give us a bit of a taster of agile change and learn a bit more about it. In terms of, I just wanted to do a bit of a shout out welcome to a few associations that we at Change Connect are really trying to connect with as well. We're conscious that there's a lot of different associations and memberships out there. Our group is, I think we were talking earlier that we're kind of the naughty kid. We don't necessarily have technically we don't have a membership base. We have a hashtag following, I suppose. But it is important in our aspect that we encourage people to go and participate in associations where there's a lot of education or membership base. So I'd just like to thank, we have Adelaide KM representatives here with Phil and Felicity, the Change Management Institute. Ian is here tonight, Project Management Institute of South Australia with Peter, and Robert is here from the Institute of Business Analysis. So we will be sharing their different events and activities that are happening, and we really do encourage you to kind of attend and participate in those things. Now, on to our presenters this evening. We have Charlotte and Ro, and we've sent you enough information really about them and their background, and I'm sure they're going to talk a little bit about themselves as well. But they do both have quite different, diverse backgrounds, and in themselves are quite agile thought leaders and professionals. You look at their background and they've come with lots of different concepts and insights and brought it into a very particular area of specialisation. So they themselves I see as agile professionals, and it is exciting that we actually have them talking here tonight. So with no further ado, I will ask them to join the group. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say, obviously, thank you to Change Connect Hub Committee for organising this event, which is fantastic, and obviously to Jess, who, a great, fantastic advocate, came on our course back in Melbourne in May. So that connection has been fantastic, so really do appreciate that and giving the opportunity to come over to Adelaide from normally sunny Perth, but very cold and wet Perth at the moment. To come and talk to you about is Agile the new black? So our style is we're not really about presenting, we're about facilitating and getting you engaged, and just want to give you a bit of a flavour around how we work together and our different styles. And also, so we're going to talk about our styles a little bit, not too much because you get bored about that and hearing about us. Talk here about Agile and the Agile Manifesto, so really starting out, why is Agile what it is, and why it's also important towards what we're doing in terms of lean change management, how the lean and the Agile pieces come together, why it's important, and why particularly now we're seeing this suddenly sort of explosion into Agile being the new black. Then we're going to talk and demonstrate actually how one of the tools in the toolkit that we have, and get you to think and just have a bit of a play around with that tool. Then we're going to obviously have an opportunity for question and answers, and then we'll obviously just do a quick summary and wrap up at the end. So we are very flexible and agile in that way. So yeah, as as we were introduced, we do listen to what the room is doing and try and pick up on the energy. That's really how we like to facilitate. We're not about teaching, we're not about telling, we're about sharing. So a little bit about me, my background, very diverse background. From the UK originally, been in Australia 9 years. I suppose there's three key things about me. As my career has changed, I've worked in very different environments. I started off doing business studies, got that as a degree, worked in HR, that was my area where I wanted to work. I was fortunate to work for Hewlett Packard at a time when it was a really strong organisation around the values and the culture, and also around, I worked in the manufacturing area, so got really introduced to Lean and just in time. That's really where I had an introduction to Lean. I actually then went into the world of not-for-profit and worked in child protection for 5 years as a business manager, so really different space. Very challenging, but again drew different strengths and skills that I had to pull out of the bag to work in that environment. Then went back into corporate world and actually back to Hewlett Packard and worked in HR again, but then moved very quickly into IT and went into the lovely world of SAP. So then that's it, no more said, because once I went into the SAP, it took me a while to get out, about 10 years. But within all my roles that I've had, I've always changed, and working with people been absolutely key and fundamental for me. It's not been about the methodology or the process, it's actually been about the interactions, the conversations, the relationships, and that's how I've always worked. For me, I'm really passionate about people and potential, and also that the work environment should be a happy place where people go to work, they enjoy work, they benefit from it, they grow and they develop. That for me is absolutely key. And I think the other piece about that is that when I came across Jason Little, who produced the Lean Change Management book, which the workshops which we run are based around that, I just thought, oh, he's just pulled it together, my sort of lean change management, I've worked with ProSci, it all just came together, and I really love it because it's given me freedom to actually really be who I am, and working in this business and starting this business up 2 years ago. I've really, really enjoyed that, and just seeing that growth and learning for me personally, but also the people I interact with and share my story with. So that's me in quite a short period of time, and over to Ro.
Thank you, Charlotte. So I'm Ro, speakily, and 3 things about me then. So back in '98, I left the world of HR and I was tempted into the world of continuous improvement. So I actually introduced continuous improvement culture into the organisation I worked in the UK, part of the Siemens organisation. And at the time, we introduced our own continuous improvement tools that were based around Deming, Schuhart, Durian, all of the sort of the quality gurus that perhaps some of you are familiar with. We actually developed those tools and introduced them into the organisation, and we called it Learn. And the reason we called it Learn was that we actually wanted to incorporate our organisational values into the way that we introduce continuous improvement. Roll on a few years from there, the organisation then decided, in its infinite wisdom, that we would then adopt Lean. So that didn't confuse anybody at all. Learn and Lean, and so obviously a lot of the tools in Lean were very similar to the tools that we'd already been introducing. And so we'd already seen some really, really good experiences of teams actually making significant improvements in businesses with Learn. So we just then sort of went on the back of that in terms of Lean as well. So my background, if you like, from a corporate perspective, was in the continuous improvement space. And the reason I wanted to get involved in that in the organisation where I worked was because I actually saw the value of people working together, of actually collaborating, building trust, and actually making a difference in the organisation in which they worked, rather than having things done to them. So when we were then asked to actually make improvements in terms of our profitability, the way that I introduced that programme was very much using that continuous improvement mindset to help people cope with something that we've been asked to do. Business was actually in a very poor state. We've got a number of programmes that were failing, and it could have been a really bad time for the organisation. What I wanted to make sure was that we actually did that congruently, and we made sure that people were involved in that process rather than having something done to them. So the fact of life was that we had to improve the business, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to command and control and tell people what to do. It's about building relationships, it's about making people feel involved in it, even when there isn't anything in it for them. So that's my background in terms of continuous improvement. In terms of sort of the lean sort of coaching agile space, then I'm also a professional coach, and a lot of the stuff that I write about is around that coaching space. So again, it's about encouraging people in the workplace to actually coach people, to coach together, rather than actually telling people. again, when I went on the Lean Change workshop with Jason, which Charlotte organised and I attended, it was like coming home. So for me, what Jason was saying just completely resonated and felt completely natural. And the more I learned about Lean Change, the more I learned about Agile, I realised actually this was stuff that I'd already been doing. And so for me, it's a very inclusive process. So why did we tell you a little bit about our journey? Well, obviously you're sitting here, you're involved in change, you're perhaps sort of experiencing this upsurge in Agile, the latest, greatest, best thing, which has actually been around for a while. And you may be thinking, well, what does that mean for me? What does it mean for my role? So as with most things, let's actually go back to the source. So who can actually tell me what the Agile Manifesto is? This isn't a test, this is just to see what we have in the room. So who can tell me what the Agile Manifesto is?
Isn't it a document that was written in about 2002 by 4 or 5 people that got together to re-engineer Project Agile?
So yes, it was 2001, a group of people got together and they produced a set of values and principles about how they were going to work in the software development world. Yeah. Do you know what was in that manifesto? If you don't, that's fine. I'm just trying to gauge the sort of knowledge in the room because I don't want to insult your intelligence by patronising you. Hello, I can only just see you at the back.
It's flipping the whole project management system around and having the customer needs at the forefront.
Yeah.
Collaboration and interactions over documentations, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
An actual manifesto.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, fantastic. Can you do 3 more? No, don't worry, I won't test you, So, sorry.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And following a plan. That's it.
Awesome. Yes. So for those of you who can't read this, so that's exactly it. So this is the Agile Manifesto. So go to the source. So let's get something out into the open straight away. The Lean Change Workshop is not about giving you Agile tools. Okay, so that's not what it's about. It's not about making you Agilists. It's about understanding how does Agile fit, how does it link with Lean Change. So of course some of the tools are very similar and if not the same. And of course the manifesto, some of the principles behind the manifesto are sort of imbued within the Lean Change principles as well, because it's all about that collaboration space, it's all about delivering value early and often, it's all about making sure that you're actually doing stuff that adds value rather than just ticking boxes. So there is definitely a link, but it's not Agile. However, you do need to understand what your source is before you say something isn't Agile. So in terms of today then, I've already hinted about what you might be coming along to hear about today. So I guess for us in terms of, and this is how we work. So we do work in an Agile way, so thank you for that. So this is how we created our Prezzo today, if you like. So it's very much around, okay, well, what do you want to find out about? So there are always 3 things, I think, when you go to any sort of event, conference, whatever it is, that you're looking for in terms of an outcome. So the first one is, mindset. So for us, it's, understanding is Agile the new black? Yeah, it might be one thing. That spirit of experimentation is really what it's about. So hopefully, because you come along today, by the time you leave here, you will have maybe different thoughts about how you experiment, how you approach experimentation in the workplace. And for some, that word experiment might be a bit confronting, it might be a bit polarizing. So again, it's about understanding your own self-awareness. Where do you sit in relation to that concept? The second thing is taking action. So you want to see a behaviour change. So when you leave here today, what is it you're actually going to do with what you've learned? Are you going to do anything? Because otherwise there's no value coming here today if you're not actually going to do something with it. So always when we do our workshops, when we do talks, what we want you to do is have something that you can take away and do something with, whatever that might be for you. And the final thing is the opportunity to reframe. So at the moment we're seeing a lot of disruption in the space around Agile. You know, some of that is driven by the change in technology, that technology is actually moving jobs in the future may well become irrelevant. In fact, they will become irrelevant. You've got different business models emerging in the marketplace, which will make some businesses irrelevant. So all of those things potentially could make people feel uncomfortable and out of control. So what Lean Change is all about for us, it's about helping you reframe that into something that you can then take control of, so that you can actually do something with. So hopefully, from what we say to you today, you might have an opportunity to rethink about how you're maybe feeling about your role in your organisation and what the changes might mean for you personally. And we've certainly seen in the workshop where we've had some personal change as opposed to, you know, organisational stuff that people are taking away with them. So, in terms of, I know this is where it becomes very interesting. Can I use a technology?
Because Row is definitely if Row touches technology, it usually breaks. So this is where I stand back.
I was a program manager in a technology program, and I was the one who tested it to destruction. If it's not going to work, I can find it out. So we've done the Agile Manifesto. Sorry, that's not the slides, I say. Test it to destruction. So the session outcome for today really is that you have personal agility to respond to whatever is happening in your organisation, both in relation to Agile and in relation to change, because we're not just talking about Agile. Agile just happens to be the flavour of the day, but it's how you respond to change generally rather than specifically. Okay, so that's in terms of our outcomes for this session. What I'm now going to do is hand back over to Charlotte, who's going to talk to you about the Lean Change principle and potentially how it fits, how it differs from Agile.
Thanks, Ray. So as I mentioned, actually a bit of context, I obviously I became a ProSci certified change manager 6 years ago, and I have been working really with the Being Human guys in Australia for the last, on and off for the last 6 years in various roles on their certification course. So one of the things that what we're talking about tonight is, and certainly the Lean Change workshop as well, it's not about throwing out tools, it's not either or, it's and this is all about developing a toolbox approach. So I've always had that approach, and some of you probably in the room have always had that toolbox approach, and this is just losing Lean Change, this is bringing tools in from different disciplines again, so from Agile, from Lean, from some of the cool brain science that's happening, you know, some of the stuff that's really out there, that we, you know, research that we're now getting to see how we really work, how our brains operate. Lots around systems thinking too. So when I did a master's degree, we focused on Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, all around systems. So what we're talking about in Lean Change is really that mixture, okay, of skills and disciplines and stuff you've already got in your toolbox, okay? It's really bringing in some of the pillars around Lean. So does anybody know what are the pillars of Lean? No? Okay, so one is respect, and respect for people. So when the Toyota production system was put in place back after the Second World War, one of the things they actually focused on, you know, the pillars was respect for people. There was the continuous improvement that was also around eliminating waste. So what Lean Change is about is actually that respect for people, experimentation, which is around that continuous improvement. You know, what's our hypothesis? We believe this is going to happen. So for example, in the change world, newsletters are things that we tend to use to create awareness, understanding of the change. But how effective are they really? How much do we test and measure the effectiveness of that? So what Lean Change is about, okay, we create a hypothesis around the newsletter to say, you know what, we believe the newsletter is really good at creating understanding in the organisation around the change. And we're going to test it by, measure it by, this, and this. So is it how many opens we have on the, if it's an electronic document? Is it when you have conversations with people and you ask questions that relate specifically to information that was in that newsletter, and you can see whether they've actually read that, interpreted it, understand what the change is about. So that's really where the experimentation adaptation piece comes in terms of testing some of the tools and things you've always used in an organisation around change, some of those artefacts, and are they really still useful? Because if they're not, then stop doing them. So it's a bit like your 60-page change strategy that nobody really reads, or they might read once and then it puts in the electronic filing system and then never seen the light of day again. So lean change is about, don't do stuff that's not adding value. Value and the customer is at the focus of what we do. And that comes into we call it recycling waste and not necessarily eliminating waste, because what we talk about is actually the feedback that you get, which could be seen as a waste product of that testing and experimentation, is actually useful information to take on to the next step. So every piece of data that you get, whether that's qualitative or quantitative data in that process, is then used and recycled in some way. Okay, so that's really the context of lean change, how it relates to lean, that respect for people, that continuous improvement and eliminate waste, but applying it to the people, not manufacturing. I hope that sort of gives it a bit of context, and that how it leads into this, which is what Jason Little has come up with. So Jason is, how would you describe him? He's a laid-back, cool software dude in Toronto. So he's really chilled. He had worked in the Agile world for many years and was really frustrated with the lack of the barriers that they came across with the organisation when they were trying to implement software in an Agile, using Agile, because they're constantly coming against barriers that the organisation couldn't absorb that pace of software. They were looking for perfection. They wanted it to be, it was always the structures and the processes in the organisations and the mindset in the organisation, in the business with which they were supposed to be serving, was not helping him and his teams in delivering that software. So he then realised there was that missing piece, that from an Agile perspective, great, you know, we can deliver and design and we do our sprints and, you know, we get everything working, we have the customer story, etc., etc. But ultimately, we're not achieving the value and the benefits because we don't understand the people bit really, we don't understand the change bit, which is where he then started to move into understanding the people side, and has brought his Agile and the people bits together. So he's really bringing two worlds together. He's bringing the Agile software world and the change world together and trying to get that to communicate and work together. So we were discussing this last night about cogs. Really at the moment what you find is that often with Agile projects, because they're like, they're the new black, we've got to implement, we've got to do it fast, we're getting hit by so much outside in the external market, we just got to go, go, go. But what's happening is this cog is turning quickly and this cog is still not able to keep that same pace. And so you're getting this dissonance between the two systems. And so what Lean Change is about is actually helping to address that and have the conversations and engage the business and the organisation in a different way. So what this talks to is, and we've got arrows going clockwise, but it doesn't always have to go clockwise. But insights is where the starting point, you're going to start as insights. And insights, what Jason refers to is what intelligence you already have in the business, what you already know about what's happening. Okay, so, you know, whether that's your engagement surveys, whether it's your pulse, whether it's your cultural surveys, whether it's your AdCart, whatever tools you use today, that's giving you insight and data. And even conversations that you're having, that's giving you the data. So what data do you have, insights around what's happening in the organisation, and obviously specifically to the change that you're working on. As a result of that, you can generate some options around, okay, so what are the things that we can do to help move along in this change process? And so that's, you know, you could say, again, going back to the newsletter example, it could be right, one of our options is, right, we've always done a newsletter, the organisation expects a newsletter, so we'll continue to do that, but this time what we're going to do is with that option, we're actually going to move it into an experiment phase, and we are actually going to test to see whether it's really achieving the results that we want it to achieve. What is the outcome we're seeking to get from that newsletter? Let's start and actually really value that, because if it's not producing value, why are we still doing it? Now there may come a point where you do all of this and you still go, well, it's not really adding much value, but the organisation still expects it. So is that a necessary evil that you still have to continue to do? Well, maybe. But again, it comes back to that cost-value balance. So in terms of what the workshop has, we actually work through this whole cycle with problems that you have that change challenge, but it's not about us providing solutions, and that's a really key point about lean change and our approach to how we help facilitate professionals in their change roles, or as agile or project managers or whatever role you're in, and the challenges that you have in your workplace. It's not for us to give you answers, because we don't understand the context, what you're working. You understand your organisation, you understand the challenges, the politics, whatever's going on. What we're there to do is help facilitate, give you tools, a way of working that maybe helps you achieve what the outcome you're seeking to achieve. And that may also, as we said, it can sometimes be personal things. We've had a few people who've come on the workshop who said, I'm really lacking confidence because I don't know where I fit. How do I fit in this? So they've gone through the 2 days and they've actually used the tools for their own personal growth and development rather than necessarily taking it back for their organisation. So they've got something from that. So that's what we really want to be clear about, because some people have come and expected us to give them a step-by-step approach to working with agile teams. We can't give you that, because we only give you the tools and the ability to think it through for yourself, because we don't know your circumstances and your exact context. So that's really where the coaching piece comes in as well, because it's helping you to help yourself, because you have the resources within you. It's just a way of how you can utilise those resources. So that's really our philosophy. So if you're looking to get answers to specific questions and you want us to be the experts in the room to come and give you those answers, we're not going to do that for you. We can't. We don't know, right? We don't have that knowledge and intelligence in your organisation and within your context. We can tell you what we've done, but what we've done in the past and how that's worked will be very different to where you are. But you might have learned something and gained something from that. So that's a really important point for both Ro and I, because we're also about being our integrity and authentic. So we work very much around transparency and trust, because we believe that's what works. So we work together in that way, and we believe when we're working with organisations, that's how we will also operate. So you as individuals and people that come on our workshops, we want to be open up front with what you will get and potentially what you're not actually going to get. So that's really, really important for us. So what we're going to now do, I'm going to stop talking and get you in to do some action. And in a minute, and then over to Ro.
Okay, cool, thank you. So that segues nicely into the minimum viable change process. So what we help you with is coming up with an approach and using tools that gives you that flexibility. So Agile is the new black. That's the latest fad that's in at the moment. If we're change professionals, what happens if, oh look, something else over here is now the new black, and everybody's agile, and we go, oh, what are we going to do now? So what we actually use Lean Change for is to help you become flexible and agile, to use different approaches regardless of what is the new black. If it's agile, cool. If it isn't agile, that's also cool. And that's about confidence, and that's where that personal development stuff comes in. So when we come to change, we like visuals, and we also like being a bit creative and a bit wacky. So we know that we're going to have a strategy. We know that we're going to have some level of acceptance, although that might not be always the case. So then you need to understand how you get people to that point of making movement through some kind of acceptance. We also know, for example, that we need strong leadership. That's an arm with a bicep on it, by the way, for those of you wondering. I did say that my drawing skills need to improve. We also need some sort of plan, and the planning process is more important than the plan, and I'm a program manager and I'm saying that to you now. The plan changes as soon as you've written it, so we need a planning process. We also need a plan because we need to be able to have something to refer back to. And perhaps most importantly of all, we need good communication. So what prompted us to sort of talk about Agile as the new black? Why is that important? Well, what we're seeing in the marketplace is that Agile is disrupting the change space, and we're experiencing a lot of questions from people coming on the workshop about, well, where does my role fit? And we've talked about the fact that some people are actually going through that personal change. How do I feel good about myself? Because we all want to feel good about ourselves, and that's where that coaching piece comes in. So what we now want to do is we want to introduce one of the tools that we actually use in Lean Change, and we want to talk to you in relation to that disruption within the marketplace. So would you like to put the question up, and I will reveal, magician-like, the team change canvas. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you just to sit there for a couple of minutes and just think about 2 questions. So first of all, how does your role stay relevant in a non-waterfall world? So that's the first question. How do you keep your role relevant? So whatever your role is, because the world is changing, the pace of change is changing. So even if you're doing a program management role, that is also changing, by the way. So it's not just change practitioners. And think about, okay, well, one thing that is going to support you in staying relevant, and one thing that is actually going to hold you back from staying relevant. So one thing that's going to support you staying relevant in your role, and one thing that's going to hold you back in staying relevant. Just spend a couple of minutes thinking about that, and then I'm going to take answers from the floor, and Charlotte's going to chalk them up so that you actually have the knowledge and expertise within the room that you can then take away with you tonight. So when you're ready, if you're ready to share, let's talk about the things that are going to support the change, things that are going to support you staying relevant.
Do you want us to share that stuff now?
Yes, please.
People skills or capabilities?
I think it's attending sessions like this and other forums to share your and to learn from others.
Thinking about co-creation.
Yeah.
Mine's very similar to the top one. I was going to say relationship building.
Yeah.
Having a mindset around learning.
Yeah.
Experiment.
Resilience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Failing fast. Failing fast.
Failing fast. Yeah.
Strong evidence.
Strong
Evidence.
evidence. Yeah.
I was going to say
Being
being
connected.
innovative.
Innovative. Yeah. And somebody else is so here. I heard some. Being connected.
Focus on the customer.
Ooh.
So probably that would be willing to negotiate
About your role, presumably. Yeah.
about everything.
Or about everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Being open to feedback.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Active listening.
Yeah.
So what was that?
Active listening. Good
Sense of character.
Sense of character.
Asking the right questions.
Okay, so what about on the other side then? What things might hold you back in keeping your role relevant?
Keeping abreast of industry trends.
Keeping abreast of industry trends.
Not keeping. Being rigid in your thoughts.
Closed mindset.
Defensive.
Defensive, is that?
Yeah.
Defensive, yeah.
Fear of vulnerability.
Fear of vulnerability, yeah.
Overly competitive.
Overly competitive.
Expecting to remain as the expert.
Ooh, we're expected to remain as the expert. Have you noticed that the pace has changed? Now we're talking about the negative stuff.
Working in silo and not collaboratively.
Working in silo, yeah. You keeping up?
No, not
Working
really,
in silo?
but I was going, okay, working in silos, okay.
Talking the talk but not walking the walk.
Yeah. Talking, 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 talking.
Desire for concrete answers.
Desire for concrete answers, yeah. Yeah. Any more for any more on holding you back,
Not understanding your team.
not understanding your team.
Practicing the wrong habits.
practicing the wrong habits.
Not understanding strategy.
Not understanding strategy yet.
Not learning to tame your ego.
Not learning
To
to tame your ego. Yep. Yep. Not learning to tame your ego yet.
What about not accepting diversity?
Not accepting diversity.
Denying your bias.
Denying
Your bias.
your bias. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Denying the why.
Lack of confidence.
Lack of confidence. Yeah. Okay. So in that very quick exercise, we've already leveraged the knowledge and expertise in the room and come up with some awesome answers around the things that will enable you to keep your role relevant and the things that will stop you from keeping your role relevant. So in terms of the tool, so let's talk about the tool first. This is based on Kurt Lewin's force field analysis, which I'm assuming that most of you are already familiar with. It's a tool that continuous improvement have been using for donkey's years. And one way that I used to remember it was that you accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. So the way that we would then use it is we would look at all the barriers and we would look at turning those into ways to actually eliminate those as barriers. So for example, lacking confidence. Okay, well how would you actually become more confident? So it's that kind of thing. In terms of lean change, obviously, you would then create a canvas which would be visible for everybody to see.